Hi, my name is Catherine Flynn. I am the Executive Director of the National New Deal Preservation Association, and that is a mouthful. And within the bigger picture, we have a very active chapter here in New Mexico, where our office is based in Santa Fe. This organization was created in 1999 after I had done a great deal of research and found that there were so many things all over this country. Primarily, I was looking at government buildings like courthouses, city halls, post offices, all this sort of thing, and found that they're all over the country, and they were all generally created in the 1930s. So what was happening in the 1930s that all these buildings got built? In 1929, this country stock market went crashing to the bottom, and all kinds of things were affected because of lack of money. And there was this man that was running for president, and he had to be pretty wild to think he could take on such a thing at that time, but he had confidence that he could pull it out. And his name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was a candidate for a Democratic candidate and was won and was inaugurated on March the 4th, 1933. 2 days later, on March the 6th and 7th, he had to close every bank in this country because of the problems that they had to work out between the stock market crash and the banks and our economies and all the problems that were facing us. So if you had money in the bank, you couldn't get it out, and you had to figure out some other way to survive. And he knew that. So he said, okay, we've got to figure out how we can provide jobs for people that are in need, because everybody was in need for the most part. And what that time period became known as was the Great Depression. And it's very interesting. We haven't had a stock market crash or anything that big happen, but we certainly are staring at some very similar situations today in comparison to then, and we want to kind of talk about that today. There were many people that didn't have jobs, particularly young men. Their families told them they couldn't go to school anymore. They had to get out and find a job. So they were known to be riding the rails, going from town to town. They'd grab on into a train and go into one of the cars, not a nice car with seats and everything. They were just living in those cars, sleeping on the floors of them, and trying to find jobs. And so Roosevelt said, look, we've got all these young men out there that need to work, be put to work. Plus we have some World War I veterans that are also looking for work, that are in need. And most people don't know, but Roosevelt considered himself a tree farmer. He grew up in Hyde Park, and there were lots of trees, and that was part of the economy. And so he said, let's put those kids to work planting trees and taking care of the trees we have in order to keep the land from blowing away that was happening in the Midwest and the Southwest because of the overuse of the lands. So he had to take care of the land, he had to take care of the kids, take care of the families, and so he came up with this program called the Civilian Conservation Corps, and that was frequently referred to as the CCC. To get in the CCC, you had to be 18, later it was 17. Your family had to be destitute. You had to be at least 5 feet or 6 feet tall. You had to have at least 3 good masticating teeth so that you were not having too many problems health-wise in that area. And no any kind of diseases that would be a problem. You could not have any of the communicable diseases. And all of them wanted to continue their educations, so they threw an educational program into this CCC program too. But one of those young boys once said, well, all they wanted was just our bodies to get work done. Well, those boys, as they became frequently referred to, went on to become major contributors to our society, in the sense that they planted 3 billion trees. They relocated 45 million trees and shrubs. They built 46,854 bridges, 205 lodges, and they even did some restoration on Civil War battlefields. And then they got in and they got paid $1 a day. And they got to keep $5 because the family got the rest of it. The 25 went back to that destitute family so that the family could then take care of the other children in the family. And so it was a great deal for them. And they had opportunities that they would have never experienced before, and we had things that came out of it that we're still using today, because we have all of these parks, whether it's Grand Canyon or any of the parks in New Mexico. They all built those roads and trails and most of the buildings in our parks today. So every time you go to a park, thank the CCC boys. That's the first program. There were many more, but that is the one that is so similar to what we're facing today. And I was thrilled to know that we have passed a bill called the Great American Outdoors Bill, which sounds like it's going to be similar, and it's going to go in and help our environment. And so there is a great parallel between the two. There were many other programs, but in which a lot of people were hired to work in. The one that's the best known is the one that started in 1935, and that was the Works Projects Administration. And here in New Mexico, there was, in 1930, 423,317 people in New Mexico, and by 1935, 1/2 of them were on some New Deal program, primarily CCC and WPA, because the others had to do with art programs, which is another whole situation. But all of these people were put to work and doing all kinds of things all over this country. And I want to think that today, hopefully, our people in Washington will take advantage of what was proposed, created, and accomplished in the 30s, between 1933 to 43, and we are still using and having many of those things with us here all over this country.